"We added your sister to your $145,000 account," my mother announced over dinner, smiling as if she had just given me a birthday present. I stared at her, unable to breathe. My sister looked down at her plate. Then my mother leaned closer and whispered, "You won't need that money anymore." 48 hours later, I would discover exactly why they had been so confident. For 12 years, I had saved every spare dollar in that account. It was not inheritance, lottery money, or a secret gift. It was the emergency fund I built while working double shifts, skipping vacations, repairing the same aging car, and quietly putting away money because I had learned early that nobody was coming to rescue me. My mother knew that. My sister, Claire, knew that too. What neither of them knew was that I had recently changed one small detail about the account, a detail that would turn their plan upside down. Before we begin, if you enjoy emotional and inspiring stories like this, make sure to support the channel by liking this video, subscribing, and sharing your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories of kindness, hope, and humanity. My name is Daniel, and family had always been complicated in our house. Claire was 3 years younger, charming, impulsive, and somehow always one apology away from being forgiven. I was the responsible one. When our father left after a business failure, I was 17 and Claire was 14. Mom worked nights at a nursing home, so I learned to cook, pay bills, fix leaking faucets, and make sure Claire got to school. I never resented her for being loved differently. At least, that was what I told myself. Claire became an event planner in her 20s. She was talented, but money slipped through her fingers. One month she would celebrate a huge contract, and the next she would call Mom crying because rent was due. I helped when I could, but eventually I set a boundary. I told her I could not keep solving emergencies that she kept creating. She hugged me, promised she understood, and then asked me for $800 the following week. I refused. That was the first time she called me selfish. Years passed. I built a modest life, married, divorced, and eventually bought a small house with no mortgage. My savings grew slowly. The account reached $145,000 after years of discipline. I kept it separate from my checking account because it represented one thing: security. If I became sick, lost my job, or needed to start over, I would have a door to walk through. Then Claire's life collapsed. Her business partner disappeared with company money, leaving her buried under debts. She moved back into Mom's house and began talking about starting over. I offered practical help, a budget, job leads, and a temporary room in my house if she needed somewhere to stay. She rejected everything. "I don't need charity," she said. 3 weeks later, Mom invited us to dinner. The food barely touched my plate before she made the announcement. "We added your sister to your $145,000 account." I thought I had misheard her. "What account?" Mom's smile faded. "Your savings." Claire finally looked up. Mom thought it was fair. I laughed once, because the alternative was shouting. "You added Claire to my account without asking me." Mom folded her napkin. "We're family. Besides, you have no children. Claire has a future to rebuild." My chair scraped the floor as I stood. "That money is mine." Claire's eyes hardened. "And apparently that's all that matters to you." I looked at my mother. "Did you give her access?" Mom hesitated for half a second. That was enough. I left without another word. At home, I opened my banking app. The balance was still there. The account showed no withdrawal, no transfer, nothing unusual. I called the bank. The representative confirmed that no new owner had been added. Only my name remained. Relief lasted maybe 30 seconds. Then the representative said, "There is a pending authorization request." My stomach tightened. Authorization for what? A joint access request. It requires verification tomorrow morning. I remembered something my mother had said weeks earlier: "You should really update your paperwork." I suddenly understood. They had not already taken the money. They believed they were about to. The next morning, I drove to the bank before opening. I carried my identification, account documents, and a folder containing something I had kept for almost 2 years, a notarized trust agreement. When I met the manager, I explained everything. She listened carefully and then asked, "Do you want to close the account?" I shook my head. No. I want to change where the money goes. She looked at the document. Then she looked at me. Are you sure? I swallowed. I've never been more sure of anything. 48 hours after my mother's announcement, the family gathered again at her house. Claire arrived first. She was carrying a folder, and for the first time I saw confidence in her face. Mom hugged me as if nothing had happened. "I'm glad you came," she said. "I came because you asked." Claire opened the folder. "We need you to sign one form." I stared at it. It was a transfer authorization. They expected me to move the entire $145,000 into a new joint account. I pushed the paper back. No. Mom's face changed. "Daniel, don't make this difficult." I didn't. Claire slammed her palm on the table. "You promised you'd help me." "I promised to help you find a way forward. I never promised you my future." Mom stood. "Your sister needs this." I reached into my coat and placed a sealed envelope on the table. "She does." I slid it toward her. Inside was a letter from the bank and a copy of the trust agreement. The $145,000 had not been transferred to Claire. Instead, I had placed the money into a protected education and housing trust, with Claire listed as the sole beneficiary, but with one condition: she could only access it for education, housing, medical emergencies, or rebuilding a legitimate business under independent financial supervision. Claire stared at the pages. "You did this?" I nodded. Mom whispered, "Why?" I looked at my sister. "Because giving you the money would have saved you for a year. Giving you a structure might save you for the rest of your life." Claire's anger disappeared so quickly that it frightened me. Her mouth opened, but no words came. She sat down and covered her face. Mom began crying. I expected an apology. Instead, Claire whispered, "I thought you hated me." I pulled out the chair beside her. "I was angry with you." "That's different." She lowered her hands. "Then why didn't you tell me?" "Because every time I tried to help, you heard judgment. I needed you to choose to change before I could help without hurting you." Claire looked at the documents again. "What if I fail?" "You probably will," I said gently. "Everyone does. The point is that failing doesn't have to destroy you." For several minutes, nobody spoke. Then Claire reached across the table and took my hand. "I called you selfish," she said. "I was scared, and I made you the villain because it was easier than admitting I was ruining my own life." I squeezed her fingers. Mom came closer. "And I treated your money like a family resource because I was afraid Claire would never recover." I looked at her. "You were afraid. But you crossed a line." She nodded through tears. "I know." That was the first honest conversation we'd had in years. The hardest part came later, when Claire discovered that the trust had another provision. If she abandoned the business or returned to reckless borrowing, the money would remain protected rather than becoming immediately available. She called me that night, furious. "You don't trust me." "I trust the person you're becoming," I answered. "I'm protecting her from the person you used to be." There was silence on the line. Then she asked, "What if I need the money for something that isn't listed?" "Then call me. We'll find another solution." "I don't want to call you every time." "You don't have to. That's the point. The money isn't supposed to make you dependent on me." She exhaled slowly. "I think I finally understand." A year later, Claire's business held its first major charity event. She invited Mom and me, but she did not mention the trust, the money, or the argument that had changed everything. She simply handed us 2 small envelopes at the entrance. Inside each was a handwritten note. Mom said, "Thank you for loving me even when fear made me selfish." Mine said, "Thank you for teaching me that being rescued and being loved are not the same thing." That evening, Claire stood on a small stage and announced that 10% of her company's annual profits would go toward emergency grants for women rebuilding their lives after financial hardship. I watched Mom wipe her eyes. Claire found me afterward near the parking lot. "You know what the strangest part is," she said. "What?" I thought you were trying to keep $145,000 away from me. And now? Now I realize you were trying to keep me from becoming someone who needed to steal $145,000 to feel safe. I smiled. She hugged me before I could answer. For the first time since we were children, the embrace did not feel like an apology waiting to happen. It felt like peace. That night, I drove home through a light rain, thinking about the first dinner and Mom's confident voice. 48 hours had changed nothing about the amount of money in my life, yet somehow it had changed everything about what that money meant. It was no longer a wall between us. It had become a doorway, one that could only stay open if all of us learned to respect the person standing on the other side. For once, nobody was asking me to save them. We were learning together along the way again. Over the next 6 months, Claire changed slowly. She completed a financial management course, found steady work, and used the trust to rent a small office for a legitimate event planning business. She kept every receipt. She called me before making major decisions, not because she needed permission, but because she finally wanted advice. One Saturday morning, I found her sitting on my porch with 2 coffees. "You know," she said, "I used to think the $145,000 was the story." I smiled. It wasn't. She shook her head. "The story was that you believed I was worth protecting, even when I didn't know how to protect myself." I looked at her for a long moment. Maybe that's what family is supposed to do. She leaned her head against my shoulder. The money had never been the most valuable thing in that account. The real value was the chance it gave us to stop measuring love in dollars, favors, debts, and sacrifices. Sometimes helping someone does not mean handing them everything they ask for. Sometimes love means building a bridge strong enough for them to cross on their own. And if this story reminded you of someone you love, or if you have ever had to choose between protecting your peace and helping your family, share your thoughts or your experience in the comments. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe for more stories about kindness, hope, courage, compassion, and humanity. Because sometimes the greatest gift we can give someone is not money at all. It is the chance to become stronger, while knowing that, when they truly need us, we will still be there.